The Seahawks have lost 5 out of 6 and plunged all the way to last place in the NFC West, but they're still just one game out of the division lead. Which players need to step up for Seattle to make a second half run after their bye week? I'm going to be breaking it all down here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s out there, whether you're listening in Yakima, Washington, or Boise, Idaho. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We are in the midst of Seattle's bye week. A lot of work taking place at the team facility, whether it's personnel or scheme-related changes. The Seahawks trying to figure out some solutions to the issues that have led to 5 losses in 6 games. I'm going to be taking a deep dive into the players who need to step up in the final 8 games for Seattle to have any shot at making a push for a playoff spot, plus midseason report cards on offense, defense, as well as special teams. All that coming up today on an episode brought your way by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. The Seahawks in the middle of their bye week, no game coming up this weekend. And really, this was the ideal time to have a bye because another tough loss against the Rams, losing 5 of their last 6. It has been a really difficult past month and a half for Mike Macdonald's squad. They have to have some time here to reevaluate what has gone wrong and how they can try to shake things up a little bit to get back into the hunt. And the thing is, they're only one game out in the NFC West. And for those of you that are thinking pessimistically, I get it. When you lose 5 out of 6 games, it is really hard to think positives. But this football team has been competitive in the vast majority of those games. Even the Bills game, they had a chance to be ahead at halftime, and mistakes ended up undoing that opportunity, and the game got away from them. If they could just clean things up. Of course, there are some position groups where the Seahawks absolutely are going to need some either reinforcements or drastically improved play to have any opportunity at making a push in the second half. I think they're going to have to go 6-2 in the last 8 games. It's a hard schedule, but they're going to have to probably win 6 out of those 8 games to have a chance to make the postseason. They are only one game out. This could be a division that 9 wins ends up being good enough to win a division with the way things have gone so far. But I think that you're going to need to win 6 games. 5 would be the absolute minimum if Seattle wants to get into the postseason. And for that to happen, they're going to need some players to step up. Some of them have played games this year. Others have not. And I'm going to start off at number 5, players that have to step up in the second half, as a player that hasn't even had an opportunity to step up to this point. And the reason that Abraham Lucas is at the bottom of my list, look, I want to be at least kind of understanding of his situation. He is coming off of knee surgery. He's been out the entire season. He missed 11 games last year. We don't know what to expect when Big Abe is back on the field, potentially as early as week comes back. And when he does return, they're probably going to have a rotation. I don't think he's going to be able to jump right in and play every single snap on offense. But if Abraham Lucas is healthy and he can play like he did his rookie season before these knee troubles started to dog him, he was one of the best young right tackles in the NFL, and he was a big part of Ken Walker III rushing for over 1,100 yards that season in his rookie year. If you can get that version of Abe Lucas or even something close, because last year he was not remotely as good as he was his rookie year because he was playing with that injury. But if he is close to his rookie self, that is going to be a huge upgrade for this offensive line, both in pass protection and in the run blocking department. And I could actually make the argument the run blocking may be the biggest asset that he is going to bring to this football team if he is healthy. That is obviously the big caveat here. But when he is right, he is a punishing blocker that has a mean streak, can drive guys off the ball, has the athleticism to win as a zone blocker. That could be a huge difference that really has a domino effect. If Seattle can run the ball more effectively, more play action opportunities, it's going to take a little bit of pressure off the pass protecting aspect, more time for Geno Smith to throw. that could have really positive ripple effects. But like I said, I've got him at 5th here because we don't know what to expect with him coming off this injury. And I don't want to put too much pressure on a guy that's coming back from a significant knee injury. Next up, going to the secondary, Devin Witherspoon coming in at number 4. And I wrote an article today, and you'll hear my midseason grade here later on the show. But this cornerback group has been decent, but not great this year. And I had really high expectations for Devin Witherspoon and Reek Woolen. It's not that these two guys have not done good things. Witherspoon was flying all over the field on Sunday against the Rams. That was encouraging to me. But he doesn't have an interception. He has 3 pass breakups. Last year, he had 15 of them. He doesn't have a sack. There's been more missed tackles. He's had penalty issues. Witherspoon has not made the impact plays yet to this point that you expect from a player that was a top 5 pick and last year was a Rookie of the Year finalist. He just hasn't been able to have any of those yet. Do I think it is coming? Yes, but they need that to happen because they got to start forcing some turnovers on defense, and they got to get more pressure on the quarterback, mixing in some exotic looks. Devin Witherspoon is supposed to be the centerpiece of that, so he needs to play at a higher level because the expectations are through the roof, and for good reason. He's got to play like a superstar in the second half if the Seahawks want to make a push in these last 8 games. Coming in at number 3, I'm going back to the offensive line. You might see a little bit of a trend here. Connor Williams. I will be the first to admit that to this point, Connor Williams has been a big disappointment. When the Seahawks signed him, I understood he was coming off a knee injury, so I expected the first month or so was going to be rough. But it's been kind of a weird path for Connor Williams because the first couple of games you could tell he was coming back from an ACL tear. And then I thought weeks 3 to 5, he was playing pretty darn good football. But here we are now in the last few weeks, the missed snaps. He's been really struggling to get the ball to Geno Smith cleanly. We saw the one 2 weeks ago against the Bills that sailed over Geno's head. There was another one that was really poor this last weekend. There's actually 2 of them. Geno caught one of them that was way to his left. And Williams has also struggled in the run blocking department. Pass pro has been okay, but run blocking, he has not been able to generate the push. I don't know if it's because he's still working his way back and he's not fully has full strength with his knee to this point, but he's been a disappointment. I'm hoping to see Connor Williams play at a higher level in the second half. If he's able to do that, the run blocking improves, the snap issues get resolved. That is going to help this offense a lot. I think that he is a key player that's just got to play like he's capable of. He has not been playing close to that level here the last couple of weeks. If they can even get close to that, it's going to make the rest of the offensive line play better because center is a crucial position. And coming in at number 2, I'm staying on the offensive line, but this is a player that didn't even suit up this last week. And this is more of a call out because what Mike Macdonald said this last Monday, he indicated, or at least hinted, that Christian Haynes maybe hasn't done what he needs to do on the practice field. So this is my call out to Christian Haynes. You saw what happened this past game for Anthony Bradford. You were on the sidelines, just not in uniform. Step up your game on the practice field so that you can force this coaching staff to play you at this point. I feel like the Seahawks have got to make this move, but he has got to prove to the coaching staff that he has earned that opportunity, like Kobe Bryant has on defense, like we've seen Josh Jobe do on defense. If he wants to play, he's got to earn it during the week. Ramp up your preparation and force the coaching staff to play. I still think this offensive line is a lot better with Christian Haynes in at right guard, especially with what we saw on Sunday. Anthony Bradford seems to be taking steps back, not improving. Christian Haynes could be one of those X factors. Think about this. If you get a healthy Abe Lucas, Connor Williams starts playing better, and Christian Haynes instantly improves your right guard spot, starts to play more snaps, the offensive line could make a significant turnaround. And I'm not saying it's a top 15 group because that would take a miracle at this point. But even if this group was a top 20 offensive line, with the points they've still been able to put up, I think you could see this offense really take off in the second half. So I want to see Christian Haynes force the coaching staff to play him, earn some opportunities after they just benched you and sat you out as a healthy scratch. Go re-earn those opportunities, get some trust from the coaching staff. And last but not least, I'm going to the defensive line with a player who just continues to be incredibly inconsistent. And I want to give Draymond Jones a little bit of a benefit of doubt right now. He's been playing with an AC joint sprain. Those are painful. I've had one before. So that is understandable. But since that Falcons game, which was easily the best I've seen Draymond Jones play in a Seattle uniform, he's kind of gone quiet again. the last couple weeks. He did have a couple pressures in the first half that led to quarterback hits on Matthew Stafford. So we saw some plays then. I just want to see more consistency, though, because we're still seeing entire halves where he just isn't noticeable. You don't know that 55's out there. There's just got to be a little bit more consistency. And I'm hoping with this bye week, he is able to get healthier and we can start to see him play the way that he was playing in that Atlanta game. And for parts of the Rams game, we saw a guy that looked much more like the player Seattle thought they were signing. So this is more of a push. Let's get more consistency from Draymond Jones, because I think if they can do that with Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, they're going to get Nwosu back here at some point. That can be a major strength for this football team that can create some problems for quarterbacks and create more opportunities in the back end for Witherspoon and company to create turnovers. There is a domino effect there, marrying your pass rush with your secondary. And I think Draymond Jones can be a part of that and also can help with the run defense if he is playing at his best. He can set a firm edge. Coming up next, I'm going to be dishing out my midseason grades on offense, all 5 position groups. That'll be coming up next here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. You'll wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On NFL at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by our lucky listeners, and special thanks to all the 12s out there. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. And make sure for your second listen to check out Locked On NFL. It's now 2 episodes a day. In the morning, you can get your cup of NFL espresso with Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans. And then our good friend, the barber himself from Locked On Jaguars, Tony Wiggins, with the second episode. All the insight and analysis that you can't find anywhere else from all of our insiders on the Locked On NFL network. And that's Locked On NFL twice a day. You can listen on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Make it your second listen after Locked On Seahawks. The Seahawks in the middle of their bye weekend. This is really the halfway point of the season. And I guess this is a kind of nice thing about having a bye at this stage. This is as close to a 50-50 as you can have with the 17-game schedule. The Seahawks have played 9 games. They've got 8 games to go. So with that being said, it's time for our midseason report card. Going to start on the offensive side of the football here. And maybe the most controversial grade when it's all said and done, at least for fans, is the quarterback position. When I posted this last week for grades, quarterback was one of the more up in the air ones. There was 40% in C range. There was 40% in the B range. Very few in A. There were actually more in the D grade range. So how do I view Geno Smith's play at this point? Well, let's start off with this first and foremost. Geno Smith is still leading the NFL in passing yards, despite the fact that he's got an atrocious offensive line that has given up more pressures than any group in the NFL this year. He is in the top 10 in completion percentage and passing yards. He is 12th currently in yards per attempt, and he somehow is just 16th in sacks converted from pressures in the NFL. 16th with all those pressures. He's been able to avoid sacks even after taking 7 of them against the Rams this past weekend. He has managed to avoid getting sacked a large majority of those pressures that he's had to deal with, and a lot of them being quick ones, as we saw on Sunday against the Rams. I'm giving him a B+. I can't go into the A's because there have been some questionable decisions, especially those 2 interceptions that were thrown in the red zone this past game. I have mentioned that the elbow was hit in the first one, but still, got to get the ball out quicker than that and just make sure that you avoid situations like that. The second one, that was bad luck with A.J. Barner getting held up by a defensive lineman and it not being called. But still, this is a guy that only has 10 turnover-worthy plays under pressure this year. With the 10 interceptions he has, there have been a few plays that could have been picked off this year that weren't. So that definitely tells you all you need to know. There have been a lot of bad luck, misfortune interceptions for Geno Smith. He is averaging 5.4 yards per carry when he takes off and scrambles. He's been effective in that regard. He's had a long touchdown run earlier this year. For all the issues that this offensive line has had, Geno Smith being the quarterback, he continues to take the blame from a lot of fans because, look, he's the quarterback. Quarterback and head coach, they're the ones that are going to get celebrated more than they deserve when you win, and they're going to get bashed more than they deserve when you lose. And this team would be competing for a top 3 pick right now if they didn't have Geno Smith out there. They have no running game. The offensive line has been atrocious pretty much the entire season, and yet Geno Smith is still in the top 10 in most notable categories. And I guarantee to you he'd have more touchdowns if this line could protect and open up the run just a little bit to complement him. That leads to the run game. Seattle has not had one most of this season. There's been several games where Ken Walker's been completely held in check. There's been several games that Zach Charbonnet's really done next to nothing with the opportunities that he's had. But I'm still giving the running backs Bs because of the circumstances. I mean, Ken Walker III, the fact that he's been able to do what he has done going into Sunday's game, he in 7 previous games had barely over 100 yards before contact. He was averaging 17.1 yards per game before contact. That is inexcusable for a running back with that much talent, but it's just because 90% of the time he's getting the football, there's somebody already in the backfield ready to get him, or there's 3 or 4 guys that have won their blocks against their blocks up front. Ken Walker III has done the best that he can do with that. Zach Charbonnet had a game where he rushed for over 90 yards, despite the fact that the O-line has struggled. And both these guys have been impactful as receivers. So the rushing stats are not there, but that is not necessarily on these two backs. You can look at a few examples where Ken Walker maybe ended up bouncing something that he shouldn't have, or maybe he should have cut back. There's always going to be plays like that. But these two guys have continued to run hard. They've made an impact in the passing game. And both of them actually done better this year in pass protection for the most part. So this is a group that I'm giving a rock solid B, despite the circumstances that they're dealing with. At the receiver position, no DK Metcalf the last couple of weeks. I'm going to go with a B. Metcalf, it was him alone. We've seen the impact that he's had not being in the lineup. I would have him at a B+ because he's been able to create a lot of big plays. He leads the team in touchdown receptions. Jackson Smith-Njigba is among league leaders. In fact, I think he has the most catches out of the slot of any player in the NFL after that monster game against the Rams. And he's also first in yards from the position. So you're seeing Jackson Smith-Njigba making that second-year leap. Tyler Lockett's had his moments. He has kind of faded into that third receiver role, but he certainly had his moments, had a nice 30-yard touchdown the other day. The reason I can't go higher than a B, I'm going to pick on Jake Bobo here. I thought Jake Bobo was going to be able to provide more, especially the last couple of weeks when DK Metcalf was out, and he has done very little. He's had 1 catch for 15 yards in those 2 games, and it almost looks like somebody like Cody White might be starting to push for playing time over him. And it's crazy because Bobo had a really good training camp, so I thought going into this year he wasn't going to get a lot of opportunities, but when his number was called, he would be there. But he's not been able to get open. The lack of speed has shown up more so this year. So I can't go above a B because the depth has not been as good as position. As for the tight end spot, I'm going to go with a C+. Might be a little higher than what some fans would think because Noah Fant has no touchdowns again. But I'm not going to put that on Noah Fant. I think there's a lot of scheming-related stuff there that is impacting the uses of tight ends. He has had several really good games before the groin injury that forced him out of action against the Rams last Sunday. Might leave him out for a while, even after the bye week, but he's been reliable since week 1 when he had a few drops. He's been reliable catching the football. He's made some big plays after the catch. And in the blocking department, he and A.J. Barner have been okay. They've been decent. They've not been great. They haven't been poor, though, either. This grade really reflects the fact that they haven't gotten much of anything from Pharaoh Brown in any capacity. He's had a lot of holding penalties. I have not seen him stand out as a run blocker the way that I thought he was going to, and he's had very little impact in the passing game. You couple that with the fact there's been 1 touchdown scored so far from this position group. I can't go above a C+. I think Barner's been encouraging. Fant's done some good things, but the stats and the overall blocking numbers, they're just not there to go higher than that at the position. Now let's go to the offensive line. And when we did this discussion a few weeks ago with the Seahawks, Rob and I both had slightly higher grades than this. I was in the D+ range and he was in the D-. Look, I'm going to go with a grade that might be worthy of Animal House. I'm giving an F- after what we saw on Sunday against the Rams. I am blaming the offensive line for that loss more than anyone because they could not protect Geno Smith. He was sacked 7 times. There were several other times that offensive linemen got whipped immediately off the snap in both the pass and the run game. This group isn't creating push vertically or horizontally. They're struggling to protect the QB, and they have been a group that's unfortunately, even when there's been continuity, it hasn't helped. They've actually gotten worse with players getting more reps. Anthony Bradford had his worst game of the season on Sunday. I can't even give him an F because of how poor that performance was. This group, you'd think that there's nowhere to go but up, but then we keep being proven otherwise in recent weeks. Connor Williams has to play better. Hopefully Abraham Lucas, as I talked about earlier, hopefully him coming back is going to be a big boost to this group after they've rotated a bunch of backups in at right tackle. And hopefully you can get decent play from Bradford, or if Christian Haynes gets an opportunity finally to start and get some decent play there. If they could put those things together, maybe this group can make a significant jump in the second half. But right now, it's hard to be optimistic with this group, especially with what we saw against the Rams, where they left Geno Smith under siege, and there really was no run game to speak of for most of the game. A lot of the big plays were generated because the running backs were able to create something out of nothing. The blocking just has consistently not been good enough, both in the run and pass blocking aspect this year, and this group simply has to do better. Up next, I'm going to shift over to the defense and special teams. Don't go away. You're listening to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can bet on everything from Christian McCaffrey scoring a rushing touchdown in his anticipated debut for the 49ers this weekend, or Cooper Kupp being the first Rams player on Sunday with a 30-plus yard reception. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This episode is also brought your way by Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps, it's just you against the numbers. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform that offers an insurance policy for injuries so your lineups stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured. If your running back that you picked leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. You can even take advantage of things like Flex Play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's the code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Dishing out mid-season report cards, just wrapped up offense. Going to shift gears now to defense and special teams. I'm going to start with the edge rushing group, one that as of late has not been quite as productive as early in the season, but I'm still going to give a rock solid B to Boye Mafe and company because part of the reason that the pass rush numbers have been diminished in recent games, Buffalo, for example, they did such a good job controlling the game running the football, using play action. It made it tough for those edge guys to really pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. But we've seen so many flashes from Derek Hall, Boye Mafe, even Draymond Jones as of late has been playing better. And so you're seeing these guys get after it, even without Uchenna Nwosu. Derek Hall is still on pace to get double-digit sacks this year. Boye Mafe not far behind him. So this has been a group that's been effective. The run defense has been inconsistent, but we even saw that look better this past game. So I'm going to be going with a rock-solid B for a group that I still think has a lot of room to grow with the youth that they have playing that position, especially with Derek Hall only being 23 years old, and the sky looks to be the ceiling for this kid right now. I'm excited to see what he's going to do, but hasn't been perfect. It's been a really rock-solid group. In the interior, I've actually lowered my defensive line grade a little bit because when we did this 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had the defensive line at a B. Then the Buffalo game happened, and overall, I still think that this group has been one of Seattle's better position groups for most of the season, but we have seen a few games where this line's gotten pushed around a little bit. There's been a few games where the pass rush has disappeared, the Buffalo game being the most notable one. So I can't give them better than a B-. We've seen flashes from Jarran Reed. I think Leonard Williams has clearly been the most consistent player in this group. He had another 6 pressures on Sunday against the Rams. Not a ton of sacks, but he's been getting to the quarterback, dishing out hits. I think he's been the best, most consistent run defender. Byron Murphy II has had some really good games, had a couple games where he's looked like a rookie, including that Buffalo game. I think this is a group, though, that has a lot of room to really turn things on in the second half as long as they keep people healthy. I think Byron Murphy II in year one here, the second part of his rookie season, I could see the pass rush start to come to life more for him. And Jarran Reed's a player that has consistently had more sacks in the second half of seasons, and he is a guy that really seems to heat up in November and December. So I've got a lot of confidence that this group is going to be able to play better than that B- grade, where they've been good but not great to this point for the Seahawks defense. At linebacker, if we didn't have the Ernest Jones trade, this would have probably been in the Ds. But Ernest Jones has made that much of a difference in the last 2 games. He made 15 tackles against the Bills. He looked out of place at times, but he was still making a lot of tackles. I can't imagine how many yards the Bills would have ran for in that game if Ernest Jones wasn't there. Tyrell Dodson had one of his better games this last week against the Rams, and I think putting him at the weak side linebacker position really plays best to his strengths. And then you add in the fact that Jones had one of the finest games I've seen an inside linebacker have for Seattle the last 3 or 4 years. And we know Bobby Wagner's had some pretty good games in that span, but he was all over the field. He was making plays in coverage. He was blitzing effectively, obviously did a great job stopping the run, helping hold the Rams into 3 yards per carry. So I'm going to give this group a C- because Ernest Jones has had that much of an impact the last couple of weeks. But up to that point, it had been more negative than positive at this point. I do think their current setup, and then you've got Tyrese Knight waiting in the wings, I think there's some reason to have optimism in 2024 for the rest of the season and beyond with this linebacking group. Fast forwarding to the secondary, let's talk cornerbacks. And I mentioned this earlier in the show, talking about where Devin Witherspoon sits this season. And this is one that I thought about maybe giving a B, but I'm going to give a B- for the cornerback group, and there's a few reasons why. I went into this season with very high expectations for this group. Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon, I still believe, are both all-pro caliber players when they are playing at their best. But on one side of the equation, Devin Witherspoon, as I mentioned earlier, there just hasn't been the impact plays. He doesn't have an interception. He doesn't have a sack. There's been a few tackles for losses, but it has not been the same as last year where he made a lot of splashy big plays. He's only gotten his hands on 3 pass breakups to this point. And that's not saying he hasn't done good things. He's made some really nice tackles in the run game. He's had a few promising blitzes. It just hasn't resulted in any sacks to this point. He's only got 3 pressures. So the numbers just don't back up what we saw last year. And then Reek Woolen, he's barely given up a 50% completion rate this year. He's got a couple of picks, but he's also given up 5 touchdowns, including that game winner in overtime on Sunday. It feels like he has been really good 90% of the time, but the 10% where he has struggled, he has given up big plays, or there's been plays like the other day where he had a chance to go for the football aggressively and he didn't do it. In the beginning of overtime, could have had a second pick there. So he's been good, not great. This grade would have been in the C's with how Trey Brown has played this year. It's been a real struggle for him, but I went with a B- because Josh Jobe has been so darn good the last 3 games since getting those practice squad promotions. Under a 50% completion rate against him. He's got 3 pass breakups, as many as Witherspoon has the entire season, and he has an interception. It was the first pick all year against Josh Allen. He's in the top 15 for forced incompletion rate. He's in the top 3 for passer rating against for qualified corners. Jobe has been fantastic. So I'm going to go B-, could maybe go a B, but expectations were just higher for Witherspoon and Woolen. So that's why I'm going with that low of a grade. And then at the safety spot, Kobe Bryant's emergence the last couple games has bumped this grade up a little bit. I had it at a C with Rayshawn Jenkins and Julian Love. I think Love has been in the B range for the most part. There's been some missed plays, including that Deebo Samuel touchdown against San Francisco, but he's also made a lot of tackles. He's been solid against the run. He's got a couple of interceptions this year. Kobe Bryant's emergence the last few games helps this grade as well. Rayshawn Jenkins, there were some issues with missed tackles in coverage right before he got hurt, had a couple of rough games. So this one is one I feel like is just slightly above dead average right now. But if Kobe Bryant continues to play well, maybe this group works into the B's by the end of the season. And we'll see where Rayshawn Jenkins fits in when he comes back from his hand injury. Real quick on special teams, the kicker and the punter, Jason Myers and Michael Dixon, I'm giving both of them B+. Jason Myers missing that extra point the other day. There was a dude in the backfield. It's going to happen occasionally. I'm not blaming that one on him. He's been sharp on extra points. He's booted several long field goals. He's been, for the most part, really accurate. Michael Dixon has had a few games where he's looked like an all-pro once again. So I'm giving both those guys B+. And then the coverage teams, I've given an A, the highest grade on the entire team. Teams have not had success returning kicks and punts against this Seahawks special teams unit. They have been fantastic. The punt and kick returns, I'm going to C+. You have Laviska Shenault's long touchdown against the 49ers, and they've had a couple other nice returns, but the muffed punts by D. Williams this season, I can't go higher than a C+ because that drags things way down. So I'm going with a C+ on kick and punt returns. As always, you can follow me on X and Threads at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to follow Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to have a Blue Friday game day, having some fun recapping the first 9 games of the season. Make sure that you're listening in and enjoy the rest of your Thursday night. Go Hawks.